Mistrust in the legitimacy of voting is already affecting the functioning of our election system. Let's start with the voting machines. Lawyers for the former president claimed that they had secret evidence that the voting machines were being programmed by the Marxist government of Venezuela or by satellites launched from Italy. Seriously. And yet these conspiracy theories have real consequences for our election system. Already this year, we've seen the spectacle of local election officials refusing to certify votes cast on machines because they believe claims that machines may be rigged. This spring, a county commission in New Mexico refused to certify a local election on that basis. The state Supreme Court had to intervene and order certification, which the commission then did on a 2-to-1 vote. The holdout cast his no vote hours after receiving a jail sentence for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. These sorts of disputes are occurring before the possible arrival in office of the Stop the Steal true believers who are now running for governor, secretary of state, and local election bodies across the country. Candidates who win any of those races will be in a position to make it more difficult for supporters of the other party to vote or to refuse to certify election results they dislike. Election experts are already discussing what to do if a Secretary of State or other election official refuses to certify state election results based on an ill-defined suspicion or personal disapproval of those results. And then there are the new laws being passed by many states changing the rules for access to the ballot box. In the last election, we saw the greatest number of voters in U.S. history and one of the highest percentages of voter turnout ever. Many people saw this turnout as a success for democracy, but others saw it as a political threat and have set out to roll these developments back and create barriers to voting. Let me just puncture one widely held belief: that large voter turnouts always benefit Democrats. Recent history shows that to be false. Hillary Clinton's campaign was thrilled with the early reports of high voter turnout in Florida in 2016 and delighted when Clinton met or exceeded her vote targets in county after county, beating Obama's numbers in the state, until the Trump totals in Republican counties started rolling in and his margin was even bigger. It was his new voters, non-traditional voters, who came out, many for the first time, and carried Trump to victory in Florida and other states. As the party bases rapidly shift, the notion that making it harder and more complicated to vote helps Republicans seems even less likely to be true. Even so, a string of Republican legislatures has taken action since the 2020 elections that do make it harder to vote. 80% of Americans said in one recent poll that they felt that protecting democracy was either extremely important or very important. Unfortunately, what they mean by this varies depending on which party they support. Democrats see the new state voting rules as attempts to suppress votes for their candidates, especially in urban areas with large minority populations, where barriers like long wait times at polling places already exist. Jelani Cobb, who will be speaking in this amphitheater on Wednesday morning, will tell us about the history of suppression of minority voters in this country and the barriers they still face. On the other hand, Republican leaders say that their voters are greatly concerned about the threat of fraud in elections and whether or not fraud actually occurred in their states, they need to tighten up voting procedures in order to create more confidence in the election system. Of course, this is somewhat circular. It is the former president and Republican Party leaders who have created the mistrust of our election system that they now say they have to respond to. But that doesn't change the pressure on them from their base to alter the rules of voting, especially for the suddenly reviled absentee and mail-in ballots. A polarized country and a polarized election have produced polarized responses to how we view the mechanics of our elections. Linda Chavez, who will be speaking with us tomorrow morning, will have more to say about that problem and what we can do about it. It is too early to know whether these new state rules will actually depress turnout, and if so, who will benefit from that? The recent Georgia primary elections saw larger turnout than previous primaries, leading defenders of the new laws to say, see, it didn't hurt anything. But we don't know what things will look like in the general election this fall, when the turnout is usually much larger than in primaries. But the new Georgia laws, and those in a number of other states, indisputably create barriers to the freedom to vote that were not there in 2020. And that seems to me a perverse outcome in a democracy which says it values the right of every eligible American to vote. My own belief is that we want more, not fewer, Americans to feel they have a stake in our country's government. Voting helps develop a feeling of participation and ownership. It strengthens a sense of common purpose with our fellow citizens as we, the people, carry the shared responsibility of choosing our leaders.